Well, it's the magic hour, so we're going to start. Welcome, everyone. It is wonderful to see all of you, and I hope you had an absolutely wonderful week. And if you didn't, that you overcame or at least got what you needed out of any challenges that presented themselves this week. Anyway, here we go. So I wanted to start off by asking people, is anybody who is here today in the community that we have feeling stuck? Anybody?
Feeling stuck?
Stuck.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to ask people if they could please to mute, just in case, not because I don't welcome your hearing your friendly voices, just that there might be background noise, and poor Braden has to then try to filter that out. Okay, so we're going to start over. So, is anyone here today feeling stuck? Hands up. I'm a little stuck. I've had a few setbacks. That's okay. Happens to everybody. Anybody feeling overwhelmed?
Yes, you can. Yes, you can do it.
Anybody feeling a little or a lot burnt out? Okay, that's an endurance thing, right?
Yes, you can.
So if you are feeling those things, how long have you been feeling it?
Yes, you can.
How long have you been settling for that? Right?
Yourself.
Are you aware that long-term anger,
Yourself.
long-term chronic frustration
We'll get you
can burn you out, can wear you down, use up your physical, emotional, spiritual, and I don't use that in a religious sense, foundation, your reserve. All right? Can use it up. So this is not something that happens to you. The event happens to you. This is something that you either make a passive or an active choice to permit in your life. And sometimes we do that because we haven't really got a firm hold on the strategies and resources that we need. Right? Sometimes we just keep doing what we just keep doing.
Yes, you can do it.
And my question to you today is,
You can do anything you set your mind
how's that working for you? To quote Dr. Phil. Now, Dr. Phil and I have very different clinical approaches. Very different, I think. But I'll tell you something. In the work he's done, the programming he's had, even though he's very Texas, I would suspect, he knows what he's talking about. And he has got people good help, all right? So when he asks that fundamental question, how's it working for you? I think what he's trying to say is the same thing I'm trying to say. If it isn't working positively for you, if it's costing you every time you do it, accept it, hide from it, avoid it, whatever that combination of choices is, it is a choice. It is a choice. The strategies, the skills you need are infinitely learnable and doable. Okay? Are you at a point where that feeling of being stuck, being overwhelmed, being burnt out, has gotten to a long-term anger? Just that little, that little burning feeling when something is really seriously not the way it needs to be, and you are not successful, or you can't figure out exactly what you need to do to minimize it, to moderate it, to handle it, manage it, get rid of it. That's step by step, right? Are you living with chronic frustration? How many people here are living with chronic frustration? Sometimes I am too. Sometimes I am too. Has it gotten to the point of rage? Because rage puts you into your stress response. All right? When it goes on for too long, or it elevates to a level that is not healthy, like it's well out of the healthy range, by that time you are either fight, flight, fawn, or freeze. And we're going to talk about some of those today. Is it grief? Is it grief about a loss? Loss happens in our lives. I'm a testament to that recently. All right? Grief, and it does exact a price. It is the price. You know, I asked last week in my level 2 hoarding support group, are you prepared to pay the price for happiness? Which is a wonderful question that Dr. David Burns taught me to ask. Ask myself, ask you. All right? Grief is the price we pay in positive terms for the love we've had. All right? It's part of life. Everything, to have balance means, think about it. Balance is not this angelic, wonderful, where the, music and harps play and we're all happy all the time. Happiness is about balance. And balance means that if there's something positive on this side, there has to be something on the other side, right? That we keep in balance. Okay. Could it be grief, not necessarily about the loss of an individual or a relationship or a loved one? Could it be grief at some sense of failure? Failure that you keep bumping your head on the same thing. That's not a negative thing. What that's saying is those issues that keep nagging at you, keep popping up, are giving you another opportunity to see it with whatever you've learned from the last time you thought about it. When you struggled, when you've looked into things, when you've asked yourself important questions, when you bumped your head on, I tried that doesn't work. You're a new person coming to it now when it pops its head up again. What have you learned since the last time? What more do you have to bring to the table? Experience. Maybe a determined willingness now to learn more about what you actually need to do so that you can complete that cycle, right? I'm hoping that no one here has settled for despair. If you've settled for despair, I want to hear from you. All right? I want to hear from you. Because there's something that you're missing, something that we're missing that would be enough to give you hope so that you can make a plan using your strength. Yes, you have them. Yes, you do. All right. To build the pathway out of whatever you're struggling with. Anybody here feeling helpless? Just like, will it never end? Will it never end? Okay? This is bigger than I am. It's not bigger. Nothing. My mother, when she was dying of cancer, I think I told you this story, and boy, I learned this one. When she was dying of cancer, I was the one who was angry. I was angry with the nurses. I was angry. Why aren't you ringing that bell? Why aren't you ringing it again? You need your medication. You need this. You need that. And my mother said, Elaine, I've got cancer. All right, I've got cancer. And I'm going to die from it. And when I feel like I can't handle something, It's too big, I break it down. I don't tolerate it forever. I tolerate it for a half hour. I tolerate it for 15 minutes. I tolerate it for 5 minutes. I break it down. When I know that I have something, and this doesn't have to be about something as life-changing as cancer, this can be about anything, all right? When you know that there is a situation that you must carry, it is part of your reality, and you need to work with it, and you need to make progress. Just keep breaking it down until you can carry it. All right? So when you're doing sorting, when you're doing grieving, when you're doing frustration, take a break, come back to it, 5 minutes. Okay, some people, when they're starting out with that 15 minutes a day commitment to working on the clutter, sometimes they are feeling so resourceless because they've been bumping their head for like a very long time on that wall ahead. Okay? They break it down into 3-5 minutes. Okay? Some people like the alarm. Some people hate the alarm. Some people find their own way to set that boundary and limit in a positive, supportive way. So we listed a whole lot of questions that I've asked you. Question for me with you is, would you give yourself permission to feel any of these negative emotions? Would you? Or do you nicey nice things? You don't look at reality. You don't admit to yourself the way you're feeling. You judge the way you're feeling. You shortcut the way you're feeling. Denying or consistently avoiding. Rationalizing is avoiding. Denying is avoiding your true feelings, and they will keep coming back because they are the truth. They are the truth about the way you feel. It doesn't mean you have to stay stuck with them that way, but when you rationalize them and give yourself some kind of psychobabble explanation for why it's happening, why it keeps happening, you're looking for answers outside yourself. All right? You deny them. No, it isn't anger. I'm just, well, I don't know what the word would be, but it isn't anger because I've never allowed myself to be angry. Maybe because I've never been taught, I've never been modeled how to be angry and not be a problem to yourself or someone else, how to manage anger. Anger is a good emotion. It's very mobilizing. It isn't so mobilizing when you turn it in on yourself or out on somebody else, however. But it's a great fuel to make you peel the layer back and look at what really is happening and what you really need to do about it. So denying, rationalizing, any other form of avoiding your true feelings, at least start by telling yourself the truth today. How do you feel about X, Y, and Z? Every time you have an experience, just do a little test run, a little practice. You don't become an Olympian at this before you can walk. All right, ask yourself, how do I feel about that? And don't go for, well, there's the positive and then there's the negative. Okay, that's when you're looking for a strategy. When you're just being truthful to yourself, just stop and ask yourself a simple question. How do I, today, right now, in this moment, feel about this? And start there. Because denying, rationalizing, avoiding is a recipe for turning yourself into a form of what we call depression, aggression. When you turn it in on yourself, right, that is classic for either generating depression or adding to whatever depression or dysthymia you have. You don't know what dysthymia is? Go back to the podcast on dysthymia. All right? That's a recipe for it. Turn it on other people, and that's aggression. That is not assertiveness. Whatever you feel, you don't have the right to hurt somebody else with it. Okay, to take it out on somebody else. You don't have that right. I don't have that right. Okay, and if you've done that, apologize. But only apologize if you really truly mean that you're working not to repeat that behavior. Okay, apology is not a get out of jail pass. Taking personal responsibility for the way you feel means you own it. You own it. You own it and you make amends. All right? So there is absolutely no other option that is going to get you to why you come to this podcast, why you continue to come every week for the vision that you have. There is no other option other than to learn to manage those feelings and the avoidance when you put your head under your arm or deny it. Lots of ways to avoid. Lots of ways to manage, some better than others. Let's look at a few. You don't have to put your hand up for this one, okay? But do tell yourself the truth. Do you eat them? Do you eat those feelings? Do you eat that anger? Do you eat that grief? Do you eat that sadness? Do you eat that frustration? Do you drink them? Maybe not till you're blotto, but till you've got kind of a happy buzz, right? Just to kind of numb it. You know, I'm not going to judge one way or the other, but sooner or later you're going to come to, and it's still going to be there. Why don't you try this time rather than any of the following? Okay, do you medicate them, legally or not? Do you sleep them? Do you go back to bed? Do you shop them? Whoops! Do you shop them by buying, or do you shop them by accepting everything that anybody else wants to give away because there must be a good use for it? Do you escape into books or magazines and read those feelings into submission till you can't remember what was upsetting you or frustrating you? You've put yourself into, now I'm talking chronic. Is this a go-to default? When that close the back cover of that book, it's okay to take a rest. It's okay to take a break. All right? It's not supposed to be like building the pyramids, right? That you keep at it until you're at the top point. But no, you're not supposed to wear yourself out. Take a break. Yes, of course, take a break. But don't escape into it. When you set a time, when you regulate yourself, and you set a time, for the next hour, I'm going to sit and read this book. All right, and I'm going to really enjoy it. No guilt. But when that hour's up, the problem you are taking a break from is still there. If you continue to do this behavior, that may not be a break. That might be escape or avoidance. Are you somebody who plans projects well beyond your ability to finish them? And not only that, do you imagine, you don't even have the project in mind, all right? But you see something and you think, you know, I could do something with that. That would be lovely if I X, Y, and Z. You didn't, until you saw that thing, you didn't have any plan for it or any need for it. Are you triggered Do you give up your plan by the excitement and the triggering of something you see? When we feel lost and overwhelmed, there is no other way out but to ask ourselves the 3 questions. What are they? What do I need? Where is what I need? Not the marketers need to excite me and give me a little bit of, a serotonin and dopamine rush, or the landlord's coming, or my gosh, I've got company coming, I've got to pack all this stuff up into boxes or bags or whatever and throw it in the spare room. Adrenaline rush. What do I need? Where is it? And how do I get enough of it to meet my need right now in this situation, specific to the challenge ahead of me? I have faced that myself this week. This isn't necessarily always the big life plan. It could be the elephant that's right in front of you. All right? It could be that. And your need might be different depending on what the challenge is that's right in front of you. I have faced that for the last 10 days, but you know what? Last night, I came up with a combination. All right, now I have to say, I was scrambling inside for the last 5 days, okay, but I had faith. Did I have any basis for that faith? Not a bit. All right, I did not have the tangibles to solve this problem, how I was going to do it, but I knew there is an answer. There's probably more than one answer. And if I stick with it and I just do what I know is a positive, or I believe is a positive, I'm going to find that answer. And I found that answer. In fact, it was a new combination. Never run my office or my business this way. All right. But I now have 4 great people who are taking a big chunk of the different components of being able to come to you. All right, being able to see people and help them. I have 4 great people who are going to do chunk. Did I ever do it that way before? Couldn't imagine doing it that way before. One of them's in Newfoundland. One of them's in Texas. All right? Yeah. Who knew? Who knew? The universe provides what you need, when you need it, in the order you need it. If you keep your antenna up, all right, and you keep moving forward. If it is out there, it might be something, the solution to why you come and you join me every week may be different for each challenge, but it is there. It is out there and it will come to you, because the fact is, you might not have the information you need, which is what I was lacking, but you're still standing despite these challenges. So you have the answer. You might not have the information to put it together. Keep moving forward. And if it's too heavy, break it down. There were times in the last 5 days when I said to myself, we're going to really think, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, we're going to do this. It's going to be in 5-minute increments, all right? Because there are so many little things to do that really are important. What's the priority? If I asked myself that question once in the last 5 days, I asked myself that question 1,000 times. What is the priority right now? Focus. Do that. What is the priority right now? That. Do it. All right? Do it. Do it. Do you know how to do this? No, you don't know how to do this. So what do I do when I don't know how to do it? I ask for advice from somebody who does know how to do it. I now have my own bookkeeping firm. Who knew? Who knew I didn't need to have an assistant to do the bookkeeping? Who knew? right? I never thought of it in that term. Okay, hey, bonus. And they're going to store the documents. I love it. I don't even have to do the filing. I love it, I love it, I love it. Who knew? This isn't about me. This is about you and the challenges. Did I feel angry? I felt a little angry. Did I feel disappointed? I sure felt disappointed. But if I hung on to it and wallowed and bathed in it, that wasn't going to get me anywhere, right? Did I feel resentful? Well, sometimes I felt a tiny bit resentful. That's not going anywhere. So I am not going to invest in it. It's a thing that comes up and I say, that's not going to serve us well. All right, that's not going to serve us well. Did I feel hopeful? Well, that probably took 3 or 4 days in coming. Do you see what I'm saying to you? Do you see what I'm saying to you in practical terms? You are not different from me. I don't hoard. All right, I don't hoard. But these are human experiences. You are not defective. You are not broken. And while you are embarrassed sometimes about the condition of your property, bringing other people in, sometimes you're afraid if it's really gotten out of hand and you're afraid that maybe some enforcement agent might be called, a mortgage company, an insurance company, the fire department, children's services, animal control, the whole 9 yards, right? Your landlord. Okay, that may be true, but that is not the solution, staying in that feeling. Keep your faith in yourself. You are not a flawed, broken human being. You're overwhelmed. You're overwhelmed. And if you've been overwhelmed long enough, you may be suffering a bit of burnout. What does burnout do? Burnout makes it harder to light the flame under you. All right? To get yourself started. How many people here feel? It's right in front of me and I can't even figure out how to start. I'm so lost. I'm so lost. Right. I am so lost. I don't even know how to start. Okay. Maybe what we're going to do is we're going to do one of these. All right. A podcast. But we might schedule it at a different time than the regular podcast. And we turn the cameras on, we turn the mics on, and to whatever degree people share, all right, how to approach something. If that would be helpful, we can do that. That's a think outside the box. I do that with my level 2 hoarding support group. All right. Cameras are on, mics are on, and we're talking in real life. So when we feel lost or we feel overwhelmed long enough, having a compassionate guide can be necessary. All right, just to help us figure out where the match is to light that candle, that flame under us, and to help us find our way out of the lethargy, the overwhelmed, the burnout, and the dilemmas. Sometimes the dilemmas that we're looking at, when we look at piles that have kind of got a jump on us, sometimes those overwhelm us. Sometimes those become really hard to drill down on and deconstruct. So today, with the rest of the time we have, we're going to look at this week the word that I hear most, okay, for the last 20 years, and I'm not exaggerating it. I don't think I've worked with one person, and I've worked with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds over the last 20 years. Overwhelmed. And sometimes when it's hung on long enough, it actually does get out to the topic. It gets to the point of the topic that we're talking about, and that is burnout. All right. So we're going to talk in more detail now about how this state of being affects our physical, our mental systems, our emotional health, and the end product is are functioning. Okay? And it absolutely can and will set us up for self-injury if it goes on severely enough or long enough. Our health, the very basis of what keeps us being able to get up and engage. All right. So is there anyone out there right now, because I need to spot you, who believes that they can exist without their heart pumping?
No, I guess not.
Yay! Yay! Everybody is cognitively intact. Woot! That's great. Because I would worry if you did say, yes, I don't need heart. Because today we're going to talk about what the damage and the cost to our cardiovascular system is. I thought, when I read the Nagoski sisters book, I thought to myself, really, do we need to talk about the cardiovascular system? And then I started to think from recent experiences, I guess the two systems that we really need to talk about, and both are heavily implicated, certainly are what keeps life, sustains life. If it is eroding our cardiovascular health, or it's compromising it, or challenging it, we want to know that. All right, it's worth one podcast. The other system is the respiratory system. And we're going to talk about that next time. Because the reason for the respiratory system is the amount of dust that quite often exists in a heavily hoarded or even a moderately hoarded environment is really not something you want to be bringing into your body. You want to be protecting yourself. And when you're sorting, you're more likely to be disrupting that and making it airborne. All right? Not a good thing. Not a good thing. Maybe that's why every day I have to take an allergy pill under my tongue and melt it that is specific to dust and dust mites. Maybe I didn't read this book soon enough. The other thing about your respiratory system is the more piles there are, the more likely it is that you will have mice at some point. All right. Buckingham Palace has mice. All right. There's no shame in mice. Mice are everywhere. The rodents will probably be the last thing on the face of the earth after we expire. But mouse scat, 1 in 5 mice has a virus that carries with it side effects for your respiratory system. And if you don't wear protective when you find mouse scat, if you don't wear an N95 mask, all right, and nitrile gloves, then if you see one mouse or you see evidence of one mouse, you probably have multiple. For everyone you can see, you likely have 20. Okay? You likely have 20 because however they're coming in and out, even if you live in an apartment building, these little devils have their way of entering your apartment. I had one poor client who lived, lovely apartment. She was very comfortable, but it was right beside the opening for the garbage chute. And not only that, the pipes that came in, you have pipes coming into your home, even if it's not an apartment building, all right? The seal on them, either outside or when the hole was drilled inside. When the weather changes, it was explained to me, mice would rather usually be outside if it's a home in good weather. More food, more nesting, more safety, but they'll settle for your place, all right? When the weather changes, or if you have the capability for safe burrowing, and that's what piles do. That's what piles do, is they make a safe environment for burrowing. Have you ever noticed too that these little devils can't deny themselves the pleasure of chewing your stuff. Okay. You know why? It isn't for chewing. It's not that they like to chew. It's that they like to build nests and have babies. And your stuff chewed up is a wonderful haven for their little nest, for their little babies, which means a whole litter of mice are probably breeding somewhere else. And they're going to grow up, they're going to blossom into family members, all right? So where I'm going with this is all of that is mouse scat because they're not house trained. And even if you can't see mouse scat, and it actually looks, if you don't know what mouse scat looks like, it looks like wild rice, basically. It's black, the shape of rice. And the closer you see it to your activities of daily living, the more you're going to have to look further afield in other piles, right? So one of the things I would suggest is if you do see mouse scat, the more mouse scat you see, the more mice you have, all right? The more you see it closer to your activities of daily living area. So you open a drawer in the kitchen and you see mouse scat there. This is not a good sign, all right? They're probably hiding until it's quiet. And I also want to offer the assurance that getting a cat is not the answer. We have a cat, and every so often we're in an older house. Every so often we'll see some mouse scat down in the laundry room, and I guess mice are beneath our cat. I don't know. Who knew? Cats rule. So we get Abel in or somebody else in, yeah. So we're glad to be able to take care of you and feed you that really great food, Stanley. And we understand that you're too good for mice. So getting a cat may not be the answer, or having a cat may not be the answer, okay? So what do you do when you see it? I'm going to assume that at some point you're going to discover some kind of something, all right? What you do, you get nitrile gloves. We're not talking about those polite little ones you put on at the grocery store when you're going to touch, perishables and things. You're selecting from the buffet cabinet, and you've got to put gloves on. I'm talking about going to Home Depot or Rona or Canadian Tire or whatever your equivalent is, and getting a box of nitrile gloves. All right. Depending on how much mouse scat you have, get yourself a mask. Get yourself an N95 mask. One of those little blue ones is not enough. Get yourself an N95 mask. If you have a great deal of mouse scat, go to your hardware store and get one of the respirator masks, the ones with the little canisters. And just while you're cleaning it up, wear that, all right? Never try to clean up mouse scat that is dry, all right? I want you to take a spray bottle and I want you to, you don't have to soak it, but spray it, because dry mouse scat, all right, will vaporize. It breaks up almost into air, like such tiny particles that it looks like dust, but it's not. So the older and drier it is, the easier it is to mistake it. All right, so we kind of got off on a tangent about mouse scat, but it's very, very important, and it's very important now, because if you're in a home, as the seasons change, this is the time when the weather starts to cool, it starts to get damp. It's not such a great environment. They don't like to be outside in the rain. They don't like to be having their babies in the rain, all right? And the cooler, when the weather changes, they try to move inside, even in apartment buildings. And where I was going with the apartment building information is that the mice came up the pipes from however they got in this 8-story apartment building, all right, and they were traveling up the pipes and getting into her apartment. And when we realized that the cockroaches were coming up the garbage chute, all right, cockroaches are everywhere. When the cockroaches were coming up the garbage chute, the mice were coming up the pipes. And I started to, and my crew did a look around in the apartment to see where in her wall were there holes this big for something that was this big. And those mice can shapeshift. They don't have bones, they have cartilage. Yes, this big. Yeah, absolutely. They can shapeshift, and that's not urban legend. All right, so get yourself some, I used 3M foam and just foam it around any pipe that goes through a wall where it doesn't fit and doesn't have a seal. All right, that's if you have mice. Now you can make that your winter project. All right, if you don't have mice, because at some point everybody's going to have mice. All right, back to the respiratory system. Okay, so this whole discussion about the cardiovascular system is not a sidebar, nothing to do with boarding discussion. It is because our cardiovascular system is pivotal to the breath we take. We exist on it, and how that stresses us to the extent that if it's damaged, that is an additional stressor, an additional thing that we have to deal with. So it's born of the habitual acceptance of being or habitually being overwhelmed. Because overwhelmed sounds so innocent, doesn't it? Are you overwhelmed, a little stressed? Oh yeah, stress isn't good for your heart, it's not good for your blood pressure, it's not. But have we ever actually read beyond the title of that article? All right, I know when I see it, I go, okay, we know that, done it. But there's a lot more to it, and we're going to have a closer look. So it's also a hidden price. And when we're stressed by other things, all right, we kind of set that aside. Like somehow the piles are not equal to the stress that we are having from looking at the same pile day after day after day with no changes, and then shaming and blaming ourselves. That is stress. A lot has been written, I know about it. But as I say, how many of us has actually done anything other than read the title of the article or the book and promise we're going to come back to finish it? All right? We don't put our own self-care, our own good self-management, we don't put it high enough in our priorities. So, are you actually, I asked this question about happiness. I'm going to ask it about overwhelmed and burned out. Do we actually, are we ready to pay the price for not being gradually, this is not a magic button, all right, gradually less stressed, less overwhelmed, maybe a little overwhelmed, but with a plan and some strategies and some skills? Are you willing to pay the price? And what can we do about it if we choose not to? All right? What do we do then? Even if we just start with, and this is the concept I want to introduce to you today, and we'll get to cardiovascular next time. Even if you're willing to just accept as success for now, today, choosing an imperfect solution that gradually lessens the cost of being overwhelmed. Would you be prepared to pay that price. It's not the answer. It's not a one-step answer. Are you prepared to pay that price? Accept an imperfect solution for a temporary period of time until you're ready for the next step, but keep doing it. Keep doing the imperfect solution, the gradual, even if it falls short, okay, of an actual solution. The benefit, the paying that price, right? It's not exactly what you want. It's only getting you closer to what you need. It doesn't actually meet your need. All right? What it does do for you is it lets me have a much time and space for a deliberate. We get closer to a deliberate. So we know how, when I say deliberate, I mean we know the direction we're headed. We're not all over the map. We're not going to let ourselves get all over the map. All right? Considered. There's that word again. Considered. This imperfect solution, gradual imperfect solution. We consider, what does it do for us? What does it give us? And then we think about putting it into action, habituating it. There's that word again, habituating regularly. We are doing enough of the imperfect solution. We are making gradual progress. And you will, when you do that and you habituate that, what happens is that becomes your norm. And in relatively short order, like usually somewhere, maybe, depending on how serious the situation is, 3 weeks to a month, 2 months, when you habituate that, then you're ready for a next step. All right? So, chronically activated stress response. So let's think now about what being in this state of being overwhelmed, this state of burnout. I think what I do, Braden, cut this one out. I think what I need to do, folks, so I don't have to keep getting distracted, is I think I need to put everybody on mute when they come in. Okay. All right. So let's think now for the next 10 minutes or so about what actually happens with our cardiovascular system that increases risk for us of giving us no juice to work with to be anything other than overwhelmed and burned out. So chronically activated stress response, that means something happens, you respond to it. It's fight, flight, fawn and freeze. Mean chronically increased blood pressure. Anybody have elevated blood pressure? Now, some of that happens with age, all right? Some of that happens with age. However, how much more of it happens because of burnout and overwhelmed, right? So what that basically does, I want you to have a vision of this, an image of this. That increased blood pressure is like constantly turning on a fire hose in your blood vessels when those very blood vessels were only set up, they're only designed to allow a gentle flowing, bubbling brook. All right? They are not designed for the fire hose. The increased wear and tear on your blood vessels lead to increased risk for heart disease. What does this have to do with hoarding? Burnout and overwhelmed. That's what. This is a hidden injury. like handling mouse scat, unprotected. Who knew? 5 years down the road, you won't even put the pieces together about why your breathing, your respiratory system is impaired. You won't connect it to those mice, but that's where it started. All right. That's how chronic stress leads to life-threatening illness. All right. What does that have to do with work? Don't you think you're paying enough of a price? Living in a cluttered environment with the embarrassment, the discouragement, the shame you feel, the criticism you give yourself, the criticism you get from other people. Everybody has an opinion. All right. Don't you think you're paying enough of a price? Do you really want to pay this price as well? Those piles and the resolution of them and the reasons behind them. All right, the reasons behind them, which is why we talk about so many secondary issues. They're all part of the same picture. I don't want you to pay this price, but until you understand what the price is and why it's happening and how it's happening, you don't have the information to work on the solution you need. So understand though, that same extra stress, that same high blood pressure, all right, will affect your digestion, your immune functioning. Does anybody think in the period of COVID you can do without an immune system? You can allow your immune system to become compromised. The hormonal bath that you live in, those are hormones. When you shame yourself, when you feel sad, when you feel discouraged, all right, when there's a rap at the door, all of those hormones that flood to your brain and go through your heart on the way in your blood vessels, through your heart to your brain, all of those are having their impact. All right. Who here has heartburn? Anybody? Who here has a wonky tummy? The need to stay close to home and fear of accidents. A little worse than a wonky tummy. Okay. Or the opposite. Frequent and chronic constipation, or worse, IBS. I'm not saying that stress alone causes IBS, but I'm saying it isn't a good addition to the picture. It's not going to do anything positive if you do have chronic constipation and you have IBS. All right? And it's fixable. This is the thing I'm trying to get through to you. It's fixable. Don't accept less than your worth. We are not built to live in that state, and that's why it will erode us. And how do you get your first signal? You get your first signal by the wah, 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 wah stress you feel in your ears. Okay, by that, oh, you know those messages. All right, you give yourself, that's your first alert system, people. All right, if we choose to stay overwhelmed, and please don't do it, living with burnout, or heaven forbid, get stuck there, that just your basic physiological response to stress, right, which was intended, it was set up to save us, will slowly bring us to our knees. Or if it goes on long enough and other complications arise, which happen in life, it can actually kill us. While you're managing your day's stressors, you have the plan. This is what the 15 minutes a day. Oh, Muscat, got to get nitrile gloves, got to get at least an N95 mask. You can get those, by the way, through dental supply offices. Online, the N95 masks, you can get those through dental supply. So I had a client advise me about that, and I did it, and I've got 3 boxes of them. Okay, so while you're managing the stressor, your body is trying to work with you to manage the day's stress. It is absolutely essential to any level of well-being that we give our body the resources it needs to complete the stress response cycle. So the damage is done when we only go partially through the loop. Okay, we feel the bear coming. The bear is looming right in front of us. Fight, flight, fawn, or freeze, right? All right, don't head for the trees. They climb trees. Okay, so we feel it. We respond. We act. But we don't resolve it. Because why? Because we're overwhelmed and we're burned out. That's why. We get stuck constantly loading more and more of the stress responses, the hormones, the chemicals in our body, the cost in our blood pressure, to our blood pressure, and in our veins and our arteries. We constantly add to that load because we don't complete the cycle. All right. So why do we get stuck? There are lots of ways in life to get stuck, folks. Clutter and hoarding is just one of them. It isn't any more shameful. It has nothing to do with personal deficiency or inadequacy. It has nothing to do with that. All right, given enough time, in pathway 3, remember the paths: genetics, a high-risk comorbid factor, being chronically just a little bit disorganized or losing control of organization. And we're not talking A-type personality here. Just you lose it, then you have to regain it, and then you become vulnerable. That path 3, I believe, can happen to the vast majority of us. All right? The vast majority. So there's nothing broken, flawed, crazy, mentally ill about hoarding. All right? It's a disorder because it gets a certain jump on you and it sets in, and then all you're doing is working from faulty beliefs and faulty strategies. All right? There are lots of reasons why stress response cycle may not be complete. These are the 3 we most often experience. And then we're going to finish for the day, and we're going to pick it up here next week. So the first is the availability, the reality of a chronic stressor. Your homework this week, please do it, is to make a list of not every single little stressor, but what are in your life the chronic stressors. It could be people, the existence of certain people in your life, the lack of certain people in your life, the lack of certain relationships having nothing to do with anybody else. All right? It could be situations, it could be health, it could be finances, it could be what are the chronic stressors in your life. All right. The way we experience it then, and what then we will look at next week. What is the chronic stress that results? What is that ever-present stress that results from a chronic stressor. Now we talked, remember that list? It wasn't for nothing. Do you eat it? Do you drink it? Do you sleep it? Do you plan it? Do you distract yourself from it? Like chronically distract, as in never get around to handling it, addressing it, or facing it. What else are you doing instead of making time and space in your day to address the stress? What can you do? Sometimes your brain activates a stress response. So what do? Most people do whatever the thing that's stressing them calls for. You're hungry, you eat. You're thirsty, you drink. You have an argument with somebody, you sit back and you consider their position, your position. If the relationship is important to you, you find neutral ground, that common ground you can both agree on, and you resume the friendship with a new understanding that there were some boundaries and limits that you hadn't quite discovered. And you agree to treat each other with respect, compassion, and understanding, right? But don't step on my toes again. All right. So you respond to it, but that doesn't change the situation, all right? So when you run, as in you react, it says that you're confronting. You see the bear is right in front of you, you act, okay? In that action that you choose, you're confronting whatever the upsetting, terrifying, stress-producing thing is. As I said, it might be people, all right? It might be that maybe a stress is simply, my gosh, she suggested that we could actually unmute and leave the cameras on, and we're actually going to work on particular areas in my home. Oh my goodness, maybe that's a stressor, okay? All right. Maybe interviewing for a job. So whatever you needed to do to handle it, you do it. But you're doing it under stress. When we escape the negative consequence by avoidance or managing it, we actually manage it, our brain says, whew, good, saved, done. Give yourself a high five. And hormonally, we get the right mixture of feel-good chemicals. And that goes to our brain, but it goes to our brain through our blood vessels in our heart. All right. But we've only handled the event, not the cause. There's the cycle. Okay, so tomorrow, I don't mean as in the 16th, I mean as in tomorrow in your life, there are bears still out there. The terrifying, disturbing, upsetting situation is still there, right? Again, your brain says, deal with it. Deal with it. Drop everything else. No decluttering, no whatever, no, but deal with it. And the cycle starts over again. Then we get stuck in the stress response. Woo! High alert. We're not getting dopamine and serotonin, people. We're getting a huge influx of adrenaline. All right? Fight, flight, fawn, or freeze. They're all adrenaline. What does adrenaline do? I'll tell you what adrenaline does. It gives you the energy to get your backside out of the problem. All right? But it also is at a huge cost, because after that, phew, you drop like a stone. And if you're busy eating improperly, if you're eating your stress, if you're drinking your stress, if you're doing other things that are not in your best interests for stress, you're adding to the problem. There is nothing that will wipe you out faster, and it had nothing to do with the stress, other than that adrenaline and sugar. Carbs will make you think you're in nirvana. Okay, simple carbs will make you think you're in nirvana. You're not in nirvana. When it wears off, you're in the pits. All right, you have just hit bottom. And if sugar was involved in it, through alcohol or through food, double indemnity. Now, am I making an argument for you being perfect? No, I'm not. I'm making an argument for you that the word is considered. Whatever you're going to choose to do, make sure that it is a considered decision. It's a considered choice. And that you're not grabbing the first thing that looks good, putting on your blinders to the side effects of it, and then paying the price later. All right? You may do a little of it. Maybe you'll have one drink. Maybe you'll have much less sugar. Maybe you'll have something else. All right? I just, at this point, remember we were talking about imperfect solutions? Well, the imperfect solution is know what you're doing and the cost. Consider the cost of the fast and easy or default solution to whatever the stress is. And whatever you do, hear my voice right now. There shall not be any self-beating up or shaming. There shall not be any judgment, any self-judgment. Do the best you can do today. Make the best decision you can do today. And if it's a considered decision, all right, you took the blinders off, you looked at the truth, it's a considered, put yourself on pause, and give yourself time to start habituating the steps that you can manage through the best decision you can make today, gradually leading you to the place you actually want to be. And we'll talk about what to do about the stressor next week. Okay? Everybody have a wonderful week. Thank you for coming. It's a joy to see all of you. Take care. Make it a good one. Whether it's a good one or not, make it a good one. Okay? All right. Take care. Bye, everybody.